All right, at this point, we're going to bring Libertarian Party candidate Tim Turner on the line. Hey, Tim, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, so let's go ahead and just dive right in here. Very first question I have for you, sir. What district and what position are you running for?
District 48, Position 2. That's up in the Redmond, Bellevue, Kirkland area.
Okay, all right. And who are you running against right now?
I'm running against Joan McBride. She's former mayor of Kirkland. This is Rodney Tom's district, if you know who he is. He's a Republican who became a Democrat, and then he made a bunch of Democrats mad by voting with the Republicans on a bunch of issues. Joan McBride was originally selected to run against Rodney Tom in the Senate race, but he's dropping out of the race and retiring, and so Joan is dropped from the Senate race down to Position 2, and so I'm running against her in Position 2.
I see. Okay.
That's not a mouthful there.
Yeah. So as far as this though, is there an incumbent in the position right now, or are they running again?
No, it's not. It's an open seat.
Okay.
The former incumbent is actually running for Senate.
I see. Okay. So it's an open seat. It's fair game right now. Anybody could get it. As far as your competition over there, the person you're running against, what are some things that you guys disagree on?
Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not entirely sure what she believes on. I've been to her website. I haven't seen any issues on her issues page. All I've seen is she has a list of about 100 endorsements of different people, different socialites who've endorsed her. Looking at her campaign finances, she's the top of her list of who's donating to her campaign. All of those donations are maxed out, at almost $2,000 each. So she's taken an awful lot of big money. On my campaign, I don't take corporate donations. I don't take special interest money from any organization. So we have a difference on campaign funding there. I don't believe that the government is there to rub shoulders and pat people on the back. The government is there to protect people's rights. I can assume that she's probably a little bit to the left of Rodney Tom. And then I know as mayor of Kirkland, one of the things she does talk about on her website is mayor of Kirkland, she annexed 35,000 people into the city of Kirkland, which is usually one of the ways that governments like to get more power. Let's expand our tax base by giving ourselves more control over more people, which I'm a strong believer that the more local control is, the better.
Yes, sir. So, all right. So as far as some big issues, I know within the Libertarian Party, and I love this about the party, is that the Libertarian Party, for example, they don't like to take handouts from companies, donations from companies, corporate entities, things like that. As far as some other issues, like what are some big issues that you run on right now?
My big issues are economic freedom. That's really my biggest focus. I'm a candidate which people can vote for if they want economic freedom, but they also want social freedom. They want to protect the marijuana laws that we have in the state. They want to protect they want to defend. I don't want to use the word defend, but they want people to be able to marry whom they choose. Right? Yeah. I will support those things. I will support people to be able to marry who they choose. I will support people being able to smoke what they choose, and I will support people's economic freedom to run your business the way you choose, without the government trying to shut you down, without the government trying to regulate you out of business, without the government trying to tax you out of business. The economy is really one of my bigger focuses, and that's probably where I'll be spending most of my time in Olympia.
Okay. Well, I'd like to know specifically what exactly would you do to help the economy in Washington?
Well, we need to deregulate. We've got an awful lot of regulations on businesses telling them how to run their business, and most of the people in Olympia, even if they've ever run a business, they're not an expert on every kind of business that there is. One of the people from my district is a former Microsoft manager. He doesn't know anything about making airplanes. Why is he making rules and laws which apply to how Boeing makes airplanes? It doesn't make sense for people who aren't absolute experts in running a business to run other people's business for them.
Yeah.
Another big
seeing that kind of stuff in Washington, D.C., where we got bureaucrats who are making regulations and things and passing laws that affect everybody, and they have absolutely no idea the implications because they don't have any experience in it. They're bureaucrats. Some of these are lifelong bureaucrats, been in Congress 40 years.
Mm-hmm. There's Another big thing is we've got to end corporate subsidies. The whole idea of stimulating the economy, that doesn't work. And you're shutting down one person's business in order to fund some other's business. And that's not the purpose of the government. Your company should succeed because it offers a good product, and it should fail because it offers a bad product. The government shouldn't come in and say, well, this politician favors you, so you're going to succeed whether you sell a good product or not. That's not how we should run the economy, and it's an exceedingly wasteful process. It causes an awful lot of economic friction, which is part of the reason for our recession, is because we're pumping money from good, healthy companies into bad, failing companies. We're giving a lifeblood transfusion from a company which is healthy to a company which is failing, and all we're doing is we're subsidizing failure. We're not making that failing company any more successful. It's still continuing to fail.
Exactly. Yeah, and that right there, I think the government should not be in the business of picking winners and losers. If your company is failing, there's probably something to do with either the way that you're managing it or the product itself. If it's a good product, it'll sell itself. You really don't have to do much to it. If you're working hard and you're doing everything that you need to do, the product will sell itself. And people will find your product and buy the product. If it's an innovative product, people will want it. People will need it. Things like that. But the government trying to basically prop up these failing industries. In my opinion, I have a major problem with that. I absolutely disagree with the government picking who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. And it's basically theft. In my opinion, you start taking taxpayer money to fund a company.
It's slavery. It's not theft. It's slavery. We pay almost a 10% income tax here in Washington State. The average person works 5 days a week. 10%, 5 days a week, that's the first half of Monday. You get up, you go to work, you work from the beginning of work to lunch on Monday, you're working for the government. That's slavery.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just to put it mildly.
No, yeah, I agree. And to me, first of all, I would like to just mention to our listeners that you did write a book. You are very knowledgeable on economics as well. But can you talk a little bit about your book that you authored?
Okay, that's the other thing that I want to do for the economy when I'm in Olympia. So my book is called The Profit Bargaining Ratio Theory, which is it's kind of a convoluted title. It's actually meant to be more for the layperson. Not the complete imbecile, but it's more for the layperson, and it talks about the economy, and it talks about this principle in the economy. When we trade, when we do business with each other, there's some benefit created. We call that profit, and it could be monetary profit. It could just be happiness. But there's some benefit that's created when two people interact with each other voluntarily, right? And that benefit is split between us somehow. It could be split 50-50. It could be split 90-10. It could be split 60-40. But that split of that benefit, that split of that profit, that's the profit bargaining ratio. It's the ratio of profit between us.
And what you're referring to the actual what I think is valued of whatever we trade.
What you think is value. That's a huge misassumption that a lot of economists make. That's where John Maynard Keynes went wrong. That's a major portion of where Marx went wrong, is they assumed that their definition of value was the one that mattered. And what matters is the individual, is the people who are in the transaction. We have different values. We trade because we have different values. The analogy I like to use, you've got a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I've got a tuna sandwich. You like tuna, I like peanut butter. We both have something that we don't want that much. But, any idiot can see that, if we trade, we'll both be better off. We'll both have more of what we want. Right?
Exactly.
And that's where that benefit is created because of our differences of opinion.
Mm-hmm. And I was actually listening to your appearance on the Johnny Rocket Launchpad. By the way, to my listeners, feel free to check out his show. He's a very entertaining show, JohnnyRocketLaunchpad.com. But I like the example that you guys created on there, and I kind of would like to expand on that as far as, let's say I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you have half of a tuna sandwich, okay? Let's say I'm allergic to peanut butter and jelly, so like I have a peanut allergy, okay? So that's valued at hardly anything for me because I don't want it. I'm allergic to it. That thing can literally kill me. But your half of a tuna sandwich, that's a lot more valuable to me. Even though it's only half, I can actually eat that. So we may be trading, and you may be getting more of the item itself, but that item that I had was valued a lot less than what your tuna is now valued at for me. So I really like that.
Benefited.
Exactly. We both benefited, and the profit ratio, for me, that would be 50-50 if I was allergic to peanut butter. Even though I got less of it, it's still an equal value to me because that one was valued at nothing for me.
Well, the key point is that we're both benefiting, and that in a true free market, you can never have something forced on you that's to your detriment. So any transaction you engage in will benefit you in the long run, because anything that doesn't benefit you, you can just veto. You can just say, I'm not participating in that. I'm not buying that. But this ratio, this ratio between us, the 50-50 ratio, the 60-40 ratio, that's not really determined by you and I, the two people who are making the trade. That's actually determined by the overall productivity level in society. Because what happens is, let's say I'm going to offer you that sandwich, and I'm saying, well, I'm only going to offer you the crust of my tuna sandwich, because I'm evil and I'm greedy and I'm selfish and I want as much as I can possibly get. That, and you're going to say, well, he's only offering me the crust of a sandwich, and this other person's offering me an apple, and you're going to go with that other person. So if I'm offering you this ridiculous 90-10 deal where you're only getting 10% profit, and someone else is offering you a 40-60 deal, you're going to go with the 40-60 deal over my deal. So if I want your business, I will have to improve the quality of the transaction that I offer to you. That's how competition works. That's what competition does. Is if
Exactly.
I want to compete for your business, I have to offer you at least as good as a deal as everyone else is giving you. And that deal is ultimately determined by the overall productivity level of society. It's what society is able to produce. It's the number of cabbages, it's the number of houses, it's the number of cars that we're able to produce with a given amount of time. And what you see in the economy is time and time again. I know you were talking about the minimum wage just before I came on.
Mm-hmm.
Government tries to change that balance. They say, that we have to have a 50-50 ratio. We have to have a more fair ratio. And what happens is when you change that ratio, the economy reacts. The economy adapts. It's not just this vegetable that's sitting there. It's a dynamic ecosystem, and it changes that ratio back. And it's driven. The fundamental driving force of the economy is the independent will of 7 billion people who live on this planet. There's no government which can override that. That ratio will go back approximately to what it was before. It will be actually, when it goes back, it will be slightly less in favor of the people it was before. It will always favor the people who were in charge before.
And
Does that make sense?
Real. Yeah, it makes total sense to me. That's the real thing, is that the people who these laws are trying to help, these laws that try to regulate and govern fairness, they typically end up hurting the people that they were trying to help to begin with. And for me, I personally think that the Democrats who are trying to force these laws on people, they actually know that this isn't helping anyone. I think it's one of those things where it's, you create the problem and then become the solution to the problem, that you created in the first. That's just my opinion, but I definitely agree.
I think there are some politicians that are oblivious to it. I think some don't care, and I think, unfortunately, there are people out there, and poor people vote for Democrats. It's in the Democrats' best interest to create as many poor people as possible, and I think there are politicians who actually do intentionally do that. I hope there aren't that many of them, but I think there are some who realize that their economic policies keep people in poverty, because those people keep voting the same way. Which I think it's unfortunate, but I think that does happen.
So as far as some of the other issues here, I want to quickly run through some things here and basically ask your opinion on some other topics here. First and foremost, for me, I'm a big Second Amendment guy. What are your thoughts on open carry, concealed carry, constitutional carry? What do you think about that?
Well, you absolutely have a constitutional right to defend, to carry a weapon, to defend yourself, not just from burglars or criminals or whatever, but from the government. I mean, realistically, the purpose of the Second, not to sound crazy, tinfoil hat time, but the purpose of the Second Amendment is so that you can shoot politicians when they get out of hand. That's the point. That's what the founding fathers were thinking. They'd just gone and shot up a bunch of tax assessors and soldiers. That's the context of the revolution, and they went and they wrote the Constitution. They said that people have the right to remain armed, and the purpose of that was to keep the government honest. Because if you don't have the right to rise up against the government, then the right to protest means nothing. And if you don't have the right to protest, then the government is no longer a government of the people, for the people, or by the people. So we need a heavily armed civilian populace to to keep the government in check and keep it honest, so that it continues to answer to the people.
And I totally agree with that. I'd like to play devil's advocate for a minute here, because I'm curious what you would say to this. I heard an argument basically stating that that in fact is why, and this is coming from a Democrat, mind you, the Second Amendment was put there as a hedge against tyranny from our government, which is exactly why they were arguing that it needed to be repealed, because the U.S. government has tanks, we have helicopters, we got nuclear weapons, and there's no way that we could possibly win if we ever were trying to fight a tyrannical government. So with that, they were justifying, oh yeah, we need to get rid of the Second Amendment. I'm just curious what your thoughts on that is.
Well, if I can play devil's advocate to your devil's advocate, why can't people have nuclear weapons and to defend themselves against the government? And of course, the logical, rational answer to that is at some point you pose a clear and present danger to other people around you. Most people don't have the knowledge, the money, the resources to safely maintain, nuclear weapons. And besides that, a nuclear weapon is kind of an anti-population weapon. It's not something that you can specifically target against the government. I'd be much more comfortable with people having, fighter jets with anti-aircraft missiles than I would against, a nuclear bomb. But really, realistically, that idea that we can't fight back against the government is nonsense. I'm not proposing that we necessarily legalize people having tanks and fighter jets. This is kind of just sort of a devil's advocate to your devil's advocate. But we could potentially wage a guerrilla war against the United States government. They did it in Vietnam. Look what's happening in Iraq right now. The government does not have infinite resources. Ultimately, the military is a pretty pro-America. They're a pretty pro-Second Amendment, group of people. They're not going to be in a long-haul war against, their neighbors. These politicians' homes are in our country. It's not like we'd have to go overseas to go get them. So, I think Americans, just American citizens, could significantly win a war against, even a well-organized federal government.
Absolutely. And, I definitely agree. I mean, let's just simply look at, for example, World War II. The Japanese did not invade America for one major reason, and it was because that they were afraid that there would be, a rifle hidden behind every blade of grass. That was their words. That they were concerned that every man, woman, and Boy Scout would have a rifle and use it against them, and they'd be fighting a guerrilla war that they had no real desire to get into. And that same situation would apply here. I mean, they wouldn't know who to fight, and not to mention, there's 330 million Americans last I checked, and the population of our military is significantly smaller than that population. There's just no way that they could fight that kind of war substantially. That's my argument to it anyway, is that, look, go ahead.
We'd surround military bases, classic siege tactics, and the military base draws a major amount of support from the surrounding community. You'd starve them out. The politicians' homes are here in our country. How many dictatorial tyrants are going to sit there while their homes are burning? The whole reason they do this stuff is for their own personal power and their own personal, name recognition. They wouldn't light their own country on fire for that purpose.
Mm-hmm. Man, yeah, I know that we've got some major tinfoil on our heads right now, but I'd like to put a little bit more on, and I'm curious, what are your thoughts about the NSA spying scandal and Edward Snowden and all that? Do you think Edward Snowden is a hero, or do you think he's a traitor?
Well, I'm going to be cautious and political here. I haven't done a whole lot of research on Edward Snowden and actually what he's released to the public. So I'm not going to sit here and render judgment on him. If he has revealed actual strategic weaknesses of the United States government in its military operations, that is a crime against the United States. On the other hand, when he exposes wrongdoing by the government against the people of the United States, those are mitigating circumstances. So I don't want to put him in a hero camp or a villain camp. I think the man deserves a fair trial based on the actual evidence that's not politicized. And the people aren't out there finding a political axe against him or trying to get elected based on what he did. He should be judged, based on his actual actions, actual, really truly military classified sensitive information that he's released with very strong mitigating bias, towards the public service he's done by letting us know the exact extent of the NSA spying on us.
Well, as far as what he did, it was actually against the law. I mean, he did violate the law, but, as Thomas Jefferson once said, and I agree with, when tyranny becomes law, resistance becomes a duty.
Well,
and
Frank violated the law. The world is full of examples. I mean, I could go on and listing examples of people who violated the law that were doing the right thing. Rosa Parks violated the law. I don't even need to list the examples. We all know the examples of people who violated the law but did the morally right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as far as the NSA as well, let me just, since, I got kind of the political answer from you for the Edward Snowden thing, let's talk about the NSA itself. Do you think that the National Security Agency should be broadly sweeping and scraping all of the communications from every human electronic communication in the world, mind you, and basically storing it in a big database without a warrant or without any probable cause or reasonable suspicion that anybody has committed a crime? They're just data mining it all. Do you think they should be able to do that? And do you agree with that?
No. So
okay.
I'm opposed to, and I'm opposed to NSA spying on just the general world at large, the American people at large. You can make the excuse that, okay, we've got to spy on a couple of terrorists, but if you're just broadly sweeping the people, you're not even close to that mark. You're way over the line.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, it's kind of upsetting because we have a Fourth Amendment there for a specific reason. Unlawful search and seizure, and this to me, if you're not getting a warrant, if you're not getting a judge to check it out and say, okay, yeah, this guy's a suspect, all right, well, we need to find out what he's doing and listen to his phone calls. I have no problem with that. If a judge signs off on a warrant, go for it. Spy on that guy like crazy. I don't care, as long as the judge signs off on it and it all is on the up and up. But when we start just listening to every single human communication, I mean, that's insane. That to me, that is the definition of tyranny. They're literally in our houses. That they're reading our emails or listen. We know that now that they're able to just basically turn on our phones and listen to us. It's an eavesdropping device in our own home now. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of stuff that they're able to do. And I am adamantly against the NSA spying. But let's bring things back a little local here. I know this has been a big debate in Oregon, and this is already something we have here in Washington State. We have a law that allows illegal immigrants to get driver's license, and I was curious what your thoughts on that are.
Well, that's kind of a mixed issue. So I'm pro-immigration. I think we could use more people coming to our country, buying products from our stores, working for our businesses. From all of my economics research, I haven't seen a strong case. I've seen a very emotional case, but I haven't seen a strong logical case that illegal immigrants are stealing our jobs. So in general, I'm highly approve the idea of people coming to America for a better life. On the other hand, if you're coming to our country, you should be coming through the legal process. We should make that legal process a lot easier, but you should come through the legal process. And I'm still kind of thinking through this issue a little bit on a couple of things. American taxpayers should not foot the bill for citizens of other countries. That's what their country is for. We shouldn't be taking money. We shouldn't be taking our money that we've gathered from our taxpayers for poor people living in our country and shipping it to other countries. Those countries should be doing it, and we should be taking care of the people here, who are part of our social contract. It's a little bit of a mixed bag because if somebody is working in the above board economy and they're paying taxes, there's kind of a well, you're paying into the system. I am concerned about people who just jump across the border and suddenly magically have access to massive financial payments from taxpayers who've been here for years paying into the system. So I'm kind of more. We should at least have a time threshold, and you should at least be a taxpayer before you start collecting money on social programs. And in general, I'm generally opposed to social programs anyway.
Here's my thing, and as far as the way I understand the Libertarian Party, and correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe you don't share these beliefs, but the Libertarian Party is they're for immigration, they're for open borders kind of thing. Like for me, I'm not saying that we should actively go out and seek out, have like some search and destroy unit that's out there trying to find illegal immigrants and send them back, but in my personal opinion, because we are already, and let's just be clear here, we are already paying to fly these illegal immigrants to other places in the country. We are already taking them from one location, like down in Texas, for example, and flying them to places like the Midwest or the Pacific Northwest, things like that, and we could be taking these people back to Mexico. For me, I think if you have broken the law to get here, you need to be deported. That's just my personal opinion. I think that giving driver's licenses to illegal immigrants legitimizes them, on top of which we already, there they are. They're right there. How about we send them back? Let's not make it any easier. Let's not legitimize them being here illegally, while at the same time, go ahead.
I want to clarify here. I kind of misunderstood your question. I was kind of thinking, the DREAM Act and paying for illegal immigrants. Yeah, if you come into the country illegally, you shouldn't be getting a legal license in the country. Although in general, I believe it should be a lot easier to get into the country. So I would like to clarify on this particular issue. I was kind of talking towards the taxation issue a moment ago. I kind of apologize if I'm mixing my thing there. If you're just on the matter of the driver's license, you shouldn't be getting a legal license to be here if you're not here illegally. But I do believe it should be a lot easier to get here legally.
And I totally agree with that. I mean, right now it takes like 9 to 10 years for somebody to become a legal citizen in the United States. I think that needs some reform as far as making it a lot easier to get in. But at the same time, I think we need to be picky about who we allow in our country. In my personal opinion, I think that, and maybe you disagree, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I think that we should be taking the best of the best, the cream of the crop from all the other people, all the other countries out there. Give people in our country to immigrate, to create jobs. People that would be doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, things like that will help our economy. But instead, not take people who are going to basically just smooch off the system, people who are going to sponge off of everyone else's hard work. I think we need to be very selective in who we bring in. And I disagree with this whole give us your tired, your weak, all that. I think that we should be getting the best of the best, and that is what will help our economy. I don't think that it will hurt us in any way if we bring in people who are going to create jobs into this country. What do you think?
Well, I think if you're going to have someone who's going to mooch off the system, if you cut off the mooching to the system, they're not going to come here. If people realize they're not going to come here and get to live in public housing and blah 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 blah, free off the American taxpayers, they're not going to come here in the first place. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know if you were trying to insinuate this. You kind of insinuated that we should recruit people to come to our country. I don't think we should necessarily spend taxpayer dollars on that. But if someone wants to come into our country and they want to share in the freedoms of America, they should absolutely be allowed to do it. As long as they're not escaping the law in their own country.
Well, no, and let me clarify. As far as what I'm trying to say, I'm not saying we go out and actually try to recruit people from other countries, but let's be selective in who we allow in. If people that are going through the process to come into our country, and they come to us. I mean, we're not hunting them down trying to say, hey, join us. They're coming to us. So let's find out of that who's actually going to benefit us and who's just going to sponge off the system. Now, as far as what you're talking about, as far as reform of the actual system, making it less of a system where they will be inclined to be part of the welfare state, things like that. If we get rid of the welfare state, then those people won't come. Yes, and I agree. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that the main problem, though, is that we can't have both open borders and a welfare state. A country that has open borders and a welfare state cannot exist. They simply will not exist. After a period of time, we're going to run into the same problems that we're having now, where we got more people in the cart than are pulling the cart of the economy.
Mm-hmm. So I want to get into an idea here that you're kind of circling around, and I don't know if you're intentionally circling around it, but it kind of sounds like I agree with you. You can't have open borders and a welfare state. I'm almost hearing the idea. Well, we can't have open borders and a welfare state, so we have to give up the idea of open borders. To me, that kind of strikes that statement. I don't know if you're getting at it or not, but that kind of strikes me as a defeatist attitude. Why can't we give up the welfare state? It doesn't work. The logic demonstrates it. The facts demonstrate it. Look at places like Detroit. It's been run into the ground by all the policies that were meant to help it. If we concede the point before the battle begins, of course we're going to lose. Maybe that's a discussion whose time has come.
Well, I'd be happy to have this discussion with you, and for me, I'm not a fan of open borders. That's really one thing that that I really disagree with the Libertarian Party on. And for me, I consider myself a conservative libertarian, fiscally conservative, socially liberal, more of a classic liberal. But I believe with Ben Franklin. He said a country that cannot secure its own borders can't secure its own destiny. And I think that we should actually not have open borders. I think it's not a good policy. I think it's dangerous to national security. On top of which, we currently do have a welfare state. Now, if you want to talk about my disagreement with the welfare state, yes, I absolutely fundamentally disagree with the welfare state, and I think we should continue to fight that battle. But we haven't won it, and in fact, we're seeing it expand every year. And in order to fight that, as well as fight the people that are coming in and basically joining that system, coming in for the purpose of becoming part of the welfare state, then let's be a little bit more selective in who we allow in our country. Let's deport people that are here illegally and make it easier for the people that we want in our country, like people that are going to create jobs, entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, school teachers, things like that. People that will benefit society, that have a plan other than just coming here to mooch off of the welfare state. I mean, I think that is a simple answer to lessening our cost in the welfare state. But obviously, we have to continue fighting against it. I'm not a fan of either of those things, but I'm not a fan of open borders. That's just me personally. What do you think?
Well, like you said, you can't have open borders and a welfare state. Maybe I should kind of elucidate the libertarian position on the open borders, and the question is what are your objections to open borders to extent? I talk about this a little bit in my book, briefly, but the big objections to open borders. You've got the security risk. You can't have terrorists coming into our country. You can't have murderers escaping from other countries and coming into the United States and trying to escape the law in our country and then murdering people here. So you definitely need to keep those people out. While you've got the welfare state going and you're paying people taxpayer dollars, to mooch off of other people, you can't have people coming to our country that are going to get into that system and just start mooching off the people who live here. But what I hear a lot is the idea that the foreigners are stealing our jobs from us. So what are your ideas on that, and do you have any other objections?
Well, as far as stealing our jobs, I don't necessarily think that is that big of an issue as far as stealing our jobs. Like a lot of these people, especially the illegal immigrants, they're taking jobs that a lot of people don't want. In some cases, they're working under the table in like really harsh conditions, things like that. So I'm not necessarily so much worried about them taking our jobs. I'm worried about them taking our money out of taxpayers' pockets to pay for the welfare system, to pay for their medical care, to pay for things like driver's license for illegal immigrant programs, things along those lines. That's what I'm concerned about. As far as the jobs, I really don't care so much, because the people that are here legally going through the process and becoming immigrants that way, they may be taking jobs that other people want, but they're a benefit to society. Now they're American citizens, so that they're being a productive member of society, unlike somebody who comes here just to mooch off the system.
So yeah, it's so the idea that a lot of people are afraid that immigrants are taking our jobs. From my studies in economics, that's not the case. What happens is an American loses their job and then they get another job somewhere else, and it lowers the cost of living. So that American ends up having actually more spending money than before. And if you analyze economics, okay, let's cut off our borders and not do trade with other people. Let's cut off our borders and not do trade with other countries. So you say, okay, these countries aren't exploiting us, we're not exploiting them, they're not stealing our jobs, blah, blah, blah. Well, apply that principle, again, logically on the state level. Let's keep Washington from doing business with Oregon. Does that make sense? Would that help, local businesses? And let's do it again on the city level where you can't trade across city lines. Would that do any business if Seattle can't do business with Tacoma? And, do it on the localist level. Okay, in your own house. You can't do business with people from other houses because they're stealing your jobs. And you'd have a lot more busy work. You'd have a lot more work to do, but you'd be less productive because it cuts into the specialization of labor where we let people do what they do best. So that's a brief rundown. I don't want to go too long into it because you haven't expressed that idea you actually hold. But for any of your listeners who are actually concerned about that, that's a really brief rundown on the libertarian take on that. I absolutely am opposed to taking I'm opposed to taking American tax dollars from one group of people and giving them to other Americans. I'm doubly opposed to taking tax dollars from Americans and giving them to people who don't even aren't even members of our society. I don't have any hard feeling against people who live in other countries, but let's not hurt American citizens for the benefit of other people in other countries. I mean, we wouldn't raid Canada and steal a bunch of their money to pay for American homeless people. Let's not steal from American people and give it to homeless people in Mexico.
And I agree with you on that. And as far as not trading across borders, that's not something that I think that we should do. I'm a big fan of the free market. I think that we need to be a lot more competitive on the global scale. So I don't think you and I are too far off on this. But let's move on. I got a couple other questions here that I want to get to. We got to cut to a quick commercial break. Tim, are you okay with sticking around with us for a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We'll be right back after this. Don't go anywhere, guys.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
And we're back. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. So when we last left, we were talking with Libertarian Party candidate Tim Turner. We were talking the issues. And if you want to join the conversation today, the number to the show is 619-924-0986. Again, that's 619-924-0986. I have Tim on the line here, and I just want to make sure that our listeners know about your book, Tim. We have it on our store, OnTheMoveShow.com, in the shop section, the third link down, and you can find it in our books area on there. I know that was a lot of details, but what's your book's name again, and what's some of the information it has in it again, Tim?
Well, the book's called The Profit Bargaining Ratio Theory. It's kind of a scary long title, but it shouldn't. I hope it's not that hard to read. It's really designed for the average person, the average politically minded person who wants to get in and understand the economy and how it actually works. And the book is really centered on this principle of the profit ratio between two people. When you trade, profit is created. That profit is shared between us, and there's a ratio that it's shared between. It could be a 60-40 ratio. It could be an 80-20 ratio. There's some ratio, and that ratio is socially governed. What happens when the government reaches in to change that ratio of trade, what it does, that ratio always comes back to its natural social balance point. The government can't change it. But what happens is the economy becomes less productive, and that skews that ratio in favor of the people who already have economic leverage. If you know the phrase, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, well, it's actually many of our attempts to help the poor which are causing that to happen. I mean, even Karl Marx I have this quote in my book, and I'm going to mess it up a little bit here because it's kind of convoluted, Here's Marx's quote: "If the advancement of legislation for the protection of the working man, both in mind and body, has become inevitable, on the other hand, it has accelerated the concentration of capital into the hands of a few." I mean, even Marx noticed this principle, that a lot of our laws that we have to help people out and to trade between two people, saying, okay, well, you have to make at least this much money with the minimum wage, or, we have to give you these benefits, or you have to have these working conditions. A lot of those laws have actually made things worse for the average working man and skewed the balance of the bargaining power in favor of the people who are rich.
Yes, sir. So as far as your campaign and things like that, I want to kind of bring us back to you and your campaign as well. And first of all, I'm curious. Can you give us a little bit of background on you and some experiences that you have that you think make you uniquely qualified for this position?
So I'm not sure where. I'm a United States Navy vet. I served in the United States Navy for 4 years. I was in the nuclear program on a submarine, the USS San Francisco. It's kind of an interesting submarine. We crashed into an underwater mountain, so we're kind of famous. That was January 8th, 2005. So I'm a Navy vet. I also taught school up for 7 months. I took over a class for another teacher, and so I taught game design. So I taught programming. I taught math in public school. So I've seen the public school system from the inside. And I've actually served the public as a public servant. And my opponent, she says that she's a public servant, and she's done that by being in high office and by being in charge in a lot of for nonprofit organizations, which isn't necessarily the same thing as public service. I've done a lot of study on economics. My book establishes a rational, logical case. The government's job is not to tell you how to live your life. The government's job is to protect your rights and to keep other people from telling you how your life should be lived. And whenever we get away from that, when we start telling people this is best for you, whatever that is, it doesn't matter what it is, but when government starts telling you what's best for you, that's always detrimental to the people involved and also to society as a whole. I mean, you can't neglect the people in society and expect society to flourish. You can't sacrifice the people in society and benefit society from that.
Okay, so I have to agree with you on that a lot. So as far as what got you into politics and what got you motivated, one thing I actually do know from listening to your appearance on the Johnny Rocket podcast, I understand that you used to be a Republican, and at some point you actually switched to the Libertarian Party and got involved in that. What brought you into politics, and what made you make that switch?
Well, I've been interested in politics since high school. I've always been interested in politics. I'm a software engineer. I like complex systems. I like to see how all the little parts work. So the concept of government has fascinated me for a long time. I worked for Don Benton as a session aide back in 2001 or so, and then I left off politics. 9/11 happened. I got involved in to say this because this is really weird. I'm looking at a smart car, and this very large man has just gotten out of the smart car right in front of me. It's just this sight picture. Anyway, so 9/11 happened, and I signed up for the Navy because I wanted to defend my country. I wanted to, my father was in the Navy, my grandfather was in the Navy, my stepbrother was in the Navy, my uncle. I wanted to carry on the family tradition. I wanted to serve my country, so I signed up. And when I got to the Navy, I thought, well, this is great. The Navy, the military tends to be a right-wing, organization. It tends to lean to the right. I was starting to come around to the libertarian perspective then. I had questions on some of the issues. But when I went to the Navy, I thought this is going to be great. It's a right-wing bureaucracy, so everything's going to be wonderful. And I got into it, and I started to see problem after problem in the Navy. People chewed up and abused by the system. Where the blame is always pushed on the guy, and it's largely a blame game. It's who can you point the finger at? And I just saw this enormous breakdown in the system, and I realized, the problem isn't who controls society. The problem isn't that the left controls society. The problem isn't the right controls society. The problem is that the control of society exists, and that people are using it for their personal agenda. That's the problem, and if you want to attack that problem, you have to get that kind of power you have to get rid of it. You have to get rid of the power to control other people's lives. And that's really where I made my major transition to the Libertarian Party. And for a long time, I've been a libertarian-leaning Republican, where it's like, okay, well, who's going to vote for more economic freedom? Who's really gonna, that's my big issue is economic freedom, because that relates to everything else. I mean, that's how you live your life. That's how you fund your life. That's how you choose your lifestyle, is where you work and how you work, and what kind of things that you're allowed to do. That's all economics. And so that is an immensely important issue for me. And so for a long time, I was a libertarian-leaning Republican voting for Republicans. But, even a lot of Republicans, don't understand the economy. A lot of Republicans vote for, big corporate bailouts, vote for subsidies for corporations if it's in their home district. And there's a lot of wasteful spending that even the Republicans support. And, the Republicans on social issues, I don't agree with a lot of things. I've never used narcotics in my life. I don't even drink alcohol. I don't drink coffee. I drink sodas every once in a while for a little caffeine pep, but I don't even drink coffee. I don't like aspirin. I don't like mind-altering chemicals at all. But I'm not going to barge into your house and shoot you over it, which is really, when you say something is illegal, you're not saying that I approve of this or disapprove of this. What you're saying is I approve of shooting people over this. I approve of taking people away from their families over this. While I don't agree with the use of marijuana, it shouldn't be illegal. I'm not going to barge into someone's house and stop them from doing it with violence, and I'm not going to pay some police officer who's trying to serve his community. I'm not going to pay him and force him to go barge into someone else's house and do that.
I totally agree. I think that's one thing, because it's so easy just to say, there should be some kind of law against that. But I think that's one part that people don't seem to understand, for the most part, is that when you pass a law, you're basically saying that you're willing to shoot somebody over this. If everything comes to blows, that person should die if they don't follow this law, and they fight the law, basically. So when people say, there should be some kind of law, they really need to ask, is it worth killing somebody over that? And I definitely agree. I like your take on that. Actually, I have a little game that I kind of want to play here, because I know, based on some of the stuff that you were talking about, you're small government, and you're against like the government overreach, and I'm kind of curious what your take on this. I'd like to play a game called Would You Abolish It? You want to play with me here, Tim?
Okay.
Okay. All right. I've never done this before, so basically I'm going to ask.
I'm a guinea pig then.
What was that?
I'm a guinea pig then.
Yeah, you're my guinea pig. So the very first thing here, I'm going to start naming off departments of the government, and I'm just curious if you would keep it or if you would abolish it. So I'm going to name it off, and you just say keep it or abolish it. All right?
Okay. No, I'm not allowed to put any qualifiers on this whatsoever.
Yeah, we'll allow you to qualify it. That's fine. No problem. All right. So Department of Education.
That should be abolished, and the power should be transferred back to the states.
Okay. Food and Drug Administration.
The parents themselves. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah. Food and Drug Administration.
Food and Drug Administration, it should be abolished. It doesn't. A lot of people are afraid that people are going to buy quack sales. Just because the government stamps a label on it doesn't mean it's safe to use. I mean, look at what they did with the BP oil spill. That was regulated. We had regulations protecting us from that. And it's only a matter of time before we have some major cure which turns out to kill people, and it got past FDA regulations. We're giving a rubber stamp of there are plenty of drugs. I mean, there are companies that have to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars in order to get something qualified by the FDA. So it's not like the FDA is out here saving lives. They're raising the cost of medicines, and they're banning medicines for years until they get through approval, which would be saving lives now. So it could sound cruel that we're not going to be saving people's lives. We're harming more people with the FDA than we're saving. It should be abolished.
All right. The Department of Justice.
Department of Justice. Now I'm going to confess that I don't necessarily know everything that the Justice Department does, but we need a court system. The fundamental functions of government are the court system, the police system, and the military system. Those are the core fundamental principles of government. So you absolutely need a court system. I know it's become very politicized of late of who we're going to prosecute and who we're not going to prosecute, which is not what the Department of Justice should be used for.
Okay, so let's go ahead and say keep it until we find out for sure. So, environmental protection.
There may be things that it does that I would abolish it, but you do need to have a court system, in order to try people, run juries, all that. And I have to confess, I'm not as familiar with the interior structure of the justice system and everything which it controls.
Yeah, believe me, I understand. I'm not expecting you to be an expert on all these. So, the next one, Environmental Protection Agency.
The Environmental Protection Agency, that's a tough one, because you can't allow people just to dump toxic waste to other people's backyards. But I don't think that there's any real serious rational person that doesn't realize the EPA has been used for a political agenda. It's been used to shut down businesses. It's been used to say, no, you can't live your life that way. You can't use your property you build on your own property. And it's been used for political purposes. We say, oh, don't hurt the turtles, don't hurt the owls, don't hurt the spotted tree lizards. And it's not about saving some species. It's about we just don't want people building houses. It's been used for that purpose. It's a hideous abuse of power. You can't have corporations dumping toxic waste into people's backyards. You do have to protect the air. So in theory, the EPA has a strong justification for its existence. I don't know that it's constitutional, which is a strong disqualifier right there. But I would have to say that the abuses under the EPA, those are bordering on, well, we should abolish it and transfer any true function it has to the Justice Department and say, okay, if you're dumping toxic waste into the environment, you should be tried under the Justice Department, not under the EPA. Because the abuse of it's horrible.
Yeah, for me, I think that we could definitely abolish the EPA, lay that kind of jurisdiction over to the local and state governments. There's already laws in the books for doing that, and these are regulations put in forth by the EPA. They're not laws. So states already have laws against illegal dumping and things like that. If you violate the law, you go to jail. I don't think there's any need to over-regulate on a national scale. Let's let the states decide what's illegal and what's not illegal. But anyway, moving forward here, I got a few more here. I want to get through these really quickly. The Internal Revenue Service.
Oh wow, that's a big one. Well, you do need to fund the government that exists. As a small government, so you have to have some sort of system for managing that. As a small government kind of a guy, I think we collect too many taxes, and we definitely politicize it too much, and we have brackets for special people, and we have special loopholes for special people, and we give way too many benefits to special people for having powerful lobbyists. And we penalize people with our tax system. That's all screwed up. There's all kinds of wrong. I'm a big fan of the idea of let's just have a postcard for your tax return. You say your first $20,000 is tax-free, and then just the difference between your net worth this year and next year, and you pay a set percentage on that. Put it on a postcard, mail it in, save yourself the money from going to TurboTax, and that should be save yourself the time of filling everything out. And just you put it on a small sheet that anyone can fill out in 15 minutes. Big fan of that. The IRS with Lois Lerner, sure, innocent until proven guilty, preponderance of evidence, but we all know that Lois Lerner deleted her emails, that she intentionally did stuff that she knew was criminal, that she knew was wrong. She spied on, or she was preying on Americans because of their political beliefs, and she deleted the evidence. It's the 18 minutes of Watergate tape. We know that's what's going to happen. We until we have solid evidence, we can't drag her into jail. You can't drag people into jail on circumstantial evidence. So absolutely she shouldn't go to jail. Absolutely she should be fired from her job and banned from public office. That's a huge black mark on the IRS. IRS in general, I'm gonna lay this idea on you. What if we didn't have taxes? That's kind of a crazy idea.
Honestly, I'm the use tax, like the taxing everybody, let's say 10% on everything that they buy, rather than, but also outlawing any kind of income tax, because my personal opinion, I think we should abolish the IRS. I think that we should simply go to a use tax, make everything fair across the board. Even billionaires spend money, so everybody would be paying their fair share. There no exemptions whatsoever. Like right now, GE, made over billions of dollars last year, but they got all these tax breaks. They didn't pay a single dollar in taxes. So that to me is unfair. If we have everything just fair across the board, everybody pays their fair share. I have no problem with it, and I don't think that we need to have an IRS there in the first place.
I want to make a couple of comments on the use tax. I kind of support the idea, but there are a couple of warnings that it should come with. The use tax is fair because we don't have special exemptions for special people. But originally the income tax wasn't really that big either, and politicians added those in over time. And over time, the use tax will do the same thing. They'll put a higher tax on Cadillacs than they do on Volkswagens. They'll put a higher tax on Ferraris than they do on Cadillacs, and ultimately we will get the same tax brackets back. The other thing is. That's the main point. I mean, so are we really making things more fair? Well, the other thing is, okay, we've seen this time and time again. I'm not stupid. We've seen this time and time again. You have fiscal conservatives. They come up with a plan. They make agreement with the left wing, saying, hey, let's make a compromise on this. So the fiscal conservatives are always the ones that say, okay, we'll go first, we'll take the sacrifice first, and you give us, yours compromise later on. And that compromise is never delivered on. We've seen that time and time again, where politicians have trusted the other side. Okay, we're going to compromise. We'll take a hit. You take a hit, or we'll take a punishment for we'll postpone our agenda for a while. You postpone your agenda for a while, but we'll go first. And we've done that, and time again we've seen that one side will give up there and the other side won't. And what's going to happen, I would just about bet money on it. I would certainly vote against it. What's going to happen if we approve a use tax, we're going to keep the income tax and we'll have a use tax at the same time, and they'll get us with both taxes at once. I am absolutely opposed to that. I would totally destroy the use tax over that issue alone. I think it's not a bad idea, but you cannot have an income tax and a use tax at the same time. That is the worst possible compromise you could have. I would absolutely trounce that. I would absolutely speak against it. I would absolutely vote against it. You cannot do both taxes.
Exactly. And like for me, the only way that I would support a use tax is making it, impossible for them to ever come back with an income tax. We'd have to abolish the IRS. We'd have to get rid of the income tax and make it impossible for them to start it up again and make it locked in at a certain, everything has to be the same all around instead of creating these special exemptions or, creating, certain increased taxes for certain things. Everything would have to be flat all the way across the board. That's the only way I would support it. But anyway, we're running out of time here. I gotta ask you, Tim, where can my listeners go to get more information about how to help your campaign, and what specifically would you like them to do?
They can go to www.electtimturner.com. That's www.electtimturner.com. They can volunteer for my campaign if they're in the 48th district. They can donate to my campaign if they want to help free market principles in a blue district in just outside of Seattle, the Redmond, Bellevue, Kirkland area. That's kind of an important thing at this stage of the campaign is funding. I won't take donations from any organization. I won't even take a donation from a small business. I'll only take donations from private individuals. And I'm a little bit leery of people who are spending $1,000 on a political donation for one candidate. I don't want to be. I support people earning their living. I absolutely support people getting as rich as they possibly can, fairly and justly. But they shouldn't have an unequal say in government. So I'm not a big fan of getting a huge $1,000 check from one particular person.
Mm-hmm. So one more time, give us that website one more time.
www.electtimturner.com.
All righty. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, Tim. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you, and you're welcome back on anytime, just so you know. So if you have anything you want to get out there, feel free to contact me again. I'll have you on.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks again. All right. So at this point, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to enter into the next segment of the show we like to call the Mack Attack.